Okay, somebody said we don't hear you. I'm sorry. Let me. Hello. Okay, are you hearing me now? Somebody let me know if you can hear me now. All right, I'm sorry I looked there. No sound. Okay. Miss Kate, can you hear me now? All right, we're gonna hold and see if you can hear me now. Somebody please give me a hear me now. Okay, I got it. Yes, you can hear me now. Okay, I must have accidentally cut the mic off. Um, I don't know where we stopped at. Can somebody put in the comments what was the last thing you heard me talk about so I can pick up where we were at? And I apologize for the sound going out. All right, thank you, Miss Kate. All right. So what I'll do is I'll just what I was establishing is the different councils, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. We can go back. But what I was saying is that in each council, it brought about changes in the church. It brought about changes in the rules and the regulation of the church. And so what we're looking at is the process by which Christianity became hijacked. Okay. Again, we're not attacking. So let me say this in case you didn't hear this. I'm not attacking Christianity. I am a Christian. I prefer to be known as a follower of the way. But to those who are familiar with that terminology that's found in the book of Acts, I am a Christian. I do believe in the Most High God. I do believe in the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Uh, what we're doing is just looking at history so that we understand. If we don't know where we came from, how can we know where we're going? And so we're looking at the history of Christianity and how it became a hijacked religion to the point of where it is today. And what I would hope that you brothers and sisters would get out of this, because I can hear somebody asking, well, what's the purpose, Rev? Why spend so much time on all of this history? Can't we just serve God, feel good, pray, and whatever? You can, however, we do not and will not understand what we're really supposed to do from a religion that started in Africa and transitioned to its way to Europe and then to the Americas. If we don't understand what it looked like and what it sounded like in the beginning. And so the main purpose of this is for us to understand and see why it's imperative that if we are going to worship the Most High God most effectively, brothers and sisters, then we must worship him in spirit and in truth. But we also must research through what resources that we have, what it was that Ben Yahweh, the Son of the living God, established was the tenets or the rules for following him. And so that's the main purpose. So as we can see here, each one of these councils, there was a change. And so again, we're going from 4850 all the way up to, you see, we're at 314. All right. And so now we're going to get into a little bit of very, very quickly establishing from the time of Adam how God dealt with man. So in the beginning, it was a personal fellowship. So how did Adam worship God? He worshiped him in person. God came down into the garden. He talked to Adam. He worshiped with Adam. So it was a personal, face-to-face relationship until Adam sinned and fell from what we say fell from grace. And then he was expelled or excommunicated out of the garden. After that, God would send angels to talk. If we read the book of Genesis, we know that, or we will find, I'm not going to say that we know because some may not know, we would find that God sent angels in the form of human beings. Abraham was met by 3 angels that came and told him that he was going to be a father of many nations and that Sarah was going to conceive. And in that, just to throw something out for you, for those who haven't read it, it was Abraham who laughed first before Sarah laughed, but the Bible, what we read is that Sarah kind of received some consequences for laughing. And you can imagine in her old age, after she had already gone through what would have been the change of life in her womb, and her mind and her husband's mind was closed, and she's told that she's going to conceive, but not only conceive, but then she's going to carry to term and then actually birth a child. I believe some of you ladies will find that funny today too. But at any rate, the way that God dealt with man was through angels. He would send his messengers. All right, they were called messengers, but they were angels of the Lord, and they talked to man and those that God chose to send messages to. Then those individuals, oftentimes we hear God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were called the patriarchs, and so these were men that God sent his messengers to and talked to, and seemed to have had the favor from them. We got leaders such as Moses, and Judaism was established. And you can see the dates 2000 to 587 BC. You can see there a URL. And so if you don't have time to write that down now, you can pull it back up after the Bible study is over, and you can actually look at that history of Judaism. I'm not going to go through all of that now, but that is a reference for you. And then we go from Moses. There were prophets, there were judges, and God Himself, or Yeshua. Yahweh himself was the king of Israel, but Israel wanted their own king because other nations had kings. And here we see the influence of peer pressure, brothers and sisters. And so Israel wanted a king like other nations had, and so they had, God allowed them to have kings. They had kings up until the point of Ben Yahweh, Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, the incarnate birth of through the Virgin Mary. And those who followed him after he started his public ministry, which history says was at the age of 30 to the age of 33, those that followed him were known as followers of the way. All right. They were later called Christians in Antioch, and from being called Christians, the religion went into Catholicism, and then from Catholicism to the Protestants in the Reformation, then from the Protestants to various Protestant denominations. And so whatever your denomination is now, that's how you arrive to that from the beginning of religion. And so the followers of Yeshua, the revolution, were called members of the way. And for those who want scripture, because some would say that, Rev, you didn't give us any scriptures, and I just can't put a scripture for everything that we say. And so you're going to have to be responsible for doing some research yourself. But to establish what I'm saying about the way, Acts chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. Now Saul, who was Paul, this was before he was converted, before his Damascus Road experience, still bringing threats and murder. Hear that, murder. Now he was a Jew. He was a Pharisee, and his religion was Judaism. And here it is that he is breathing threat and murder against the disciples of the Lord. Went to the high priest and asked for letters from him to the synagogues at Damascus, so from the religious leaders of Judaism, so that if he found any belonging to the way, here it is, belonging to the way, and I bolded that so that you can see it, Acts. This is what they were called. To any belonging to the way, both men and women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. And so if he found any who were followers of the teachings of Ben Yahweh, then he could bring them to Jerusalem and have them in prison. Remember, it was him who stood by and watched Stephen be stoned. Right, this is before his conversion. And so here's the establishment of what the name of the followers of Ben Yahweh, Yeshua, the Son of the Most High God, were called in the biblical days. They were called the followers of the way, the way. All right, you also can find that in John 14:6, Acts 18:25, 19:9, 23, 22:4, 24:14, and 22. So those are other references you can come back to if you need to. So again, as we look at this hijacked religion, Ben Yahweh, Jesus the Christ, again, we've already stated Matthew chapter 5-7. Brothers and sisters, if you want to know what the tenets or the rules or the laws were for those who followed Jesus, who followed Ben Yahweh, who followed Yeshua was, and still are, you have to go back and read Matthew's chapter 5, 6, and 7. Some of you may know that as the Sermon on the Mountain, and that's what it's been named because that's where it was given. But this is where he established the revolution of Judaism and we would say the evolution of the religion. All right, Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. I know a lot of folks like to read the epistles of Paul, but Paul did not establish the revolution. Paul, as a matter of fact, did not even know Jesus in person. He had an epiphany on the Damascus road. All right, he had an epiphany. All right, but he was not one of the original disciples, and so we have to read. I can't emphasize that enough. To know what we are to do as followers of the way or as Christians, we really have to know, read, understand, and ask the Lord for an interpretation of Matthew's chapter 5, 6, and 7. All right, and so. Again, we established they were called followers of the way. Then in the book of Acts, you'll find that they were first called Christians in Antioch. Antioch is now, I believe, part of modern day Turkey, which is a part of Europe. It's a part of what we call modern day Europe. So this is where there's a diaspora of the African Hebrew Israelites, but mainly these are we'll use the large, broad category of European converts, all right? And we know that this is who mainly Paul ministered to as he went through Europe establishing churches. Every church that Europe and what is known as Asia, all right, Asia Minor, these are areas that Paul evangelized. Other folks evangelize other parts of Africa, but we don't have a lot of biblical history. Well, we do have biblical history on that. We just have to know what we're looking for. So let me rephrase that. All right. And so followers of the way are now called Christians. Okay. They go from being called Christians to being Catholics after the Roman Catholic Church authorizes and makes Christianity the religion of the state. They become Catholics, and from Catholics there's the Reformation, and so there's the protest by Martin Luther and those that are in his group, and from that protest comes our Protestant denominations, and so. Let's go back and look at that a little bit further. So as we look at Catholicism, and so here is the hijacking, the clear hijacking of the religion, the clear hijacking of the religion, Catholicism. The Catholics consider Peter to be their first bishop based on Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 20. We're going to look at that, brothers and sisters, to see. But this is the foundational scriptures that the Catholics use for saying that Peter was their first bishop. So here it is, Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 20. And I'm just checking to make sure everybody is still hearing. All right. And again, we apologize for the problem with the sound in the beginning. Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 20. I'm reading. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." All right, Christ is, or Messiah is the chosen one or the King, and that's who the Jews were looking for, but didn't recognize, because they were looking for someone to deliver them out of the hands of physical bondage and of physical kings. Verse 17, and Jesus said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah," and again, that's son of, "because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven." Then he warned the disciples that they should tell no one that he was the Christ. Now, this is a whole Bible study within itself. I don't have time to go into, going into what many of you may call the binding and loosening principles. But if we look at, we see some present tense, some past tense, and some future tense in it. And then verse number 20, those things that make you say, "Ah," or those things that make you think. All right, here where you need to put on your critical thinking cap. In verse number 20, he says, "Then he warned the disciples that they should tell no one that he was the Christ." So the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, and he's telling his disciples at this point in the ministry not to tell anybody that, look, this is who Jesus the Christ is. So he tells them not to tell them at this point and time. And that's interesting, and that's a study on its own of why he didn't want it to be revealed to others. And as he said here, it was revealed to Peter by the Father. But this is the foundational scriptures that the Catholic Church uses to establish that Peter was their first bishop. All right. From 50 AD to about 313, Christianity was illegal, and those who were Christians were punished in the Roman Empire. So from 50 to 313, brothers and sisters, it was illegal to be a Christian, and Christians were persecuted. All right, they were persecuted. The Roman emperor was considered to be a deity, and to worship any other deity than the Roman Caesar was illegal. And so then you had the Edict of Sedisa, which a worship recognized and accepted by the Roman Empire. So this edict, and we're going to take a look at that. If I can here, let's see. and give us a moment because this is, I need the computer is going to go to the website, I hope. Looks like it's not doing it. Okay, so it worked at home, but it's not working here. All right, and so what this established was a work. Actually, let me just if you don't mind, we'll okay, there it is. All right, so can you see that? Can you read it? Are you able to read? All right, looks like I may need to make it a little bit larger. You all bear with us as I try to I didn't want to put all of this in a PowerPoint, and so um, we're going directly to the web. And so, can you read it now? This Newsome, let me know. Can you read? Can you read the slide now? All right, I see. Okay, all right. So this edict was, as we can see, was called the Edict of Toleration. It was issued in 311 by the Roman Emperor, of officially ending the Diocletian persecution of Christianity in the East. Okay, and so this was to establish the end of the persecution. 311. All right, 311. So from the time of the Sermon on the Mountain, for those who know it that, or I say the manifesto of the revolution of Judaism, from that time until 311, Christians or followers of the way were persecuted, not only by those who were Orthodox at that time, or fell under the definition of Orthodox Jews. So they were persecuted by the Jews. They were persecuted by Rome. All right. And so it gives a new meaning to Matthew 5. Blessed are those who are persecuted for his name's sake. And I'm paraphrasing, because as we can see from 48 or 50 up until 311, people were literally persecuted. People were literally imprisoned. People were burned. People were murdered because they would not renounce the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They would not renounce the Son of the living God. They were literally persecuted. All right. And so let's see if we can go back. Now to, if we can get the Edict of Milan. All right, so let's see what there it is. So the Edict of Milan happens 2 years later in 313. All right, and so we can see this happens in February 313. It's an agreement to treat Christians benevolently within the Roman Empire. So at this point, the Roman Empire has not made this the religion of the state. They've just decided that they're going to treat them benevolently. All right. So Western Roman Emperor Constantine, an emperor who controlled the Balkans, met in Mediterranean, modern-day Milan, and among other things, agreed to change policies toward Christians following the Edict of Toleration, which we just looked at. This Edict of Milan gave Christianity legal status and a reprieve from persecution, but did not make it the state church of the Roman Empire. That occurred in 380. All right, that occurred in 380. All right, so we go from 313 to 380, and under the Edict of Thessalonica. All right, and so under this, in 380, three resigning Roman emperors made the Nicene Christianity the state religion. The Nicene, okay, Christianity, the state religion of the Roman Empire. So that happens in 380. At this point, the religion has been officially hijacked. All right, this is the beginning of official Catholicism. In 380, the religion has been completely hijacked by the Romans or Europeans. Okay, some of you may not like that, but this is the truth. You can go back and do the research for yourself. All right, now from that time, we looked at these different councils, and I'm just going to skip through those. And I want to go to this list here. This is what we're going to spend the rest of our night on. And that's going to be maybe another 15 minutes. All right. And so from the official hijacking in 380, where those who follow Yeshua ben Yahweh, Jesus the Christ, who were known as the Way or followers of the Way, they were called Christians, and if you want to do some research on your own, you'll find that was like using the N word for people of color today. Back then, and until the point that it was adopted by the Roman Catholic Church. All right, and once Rome adopted it, it became a different meaning in the word, so it was accepted. But up until that time, while they were persecuted, it was when you called a person a Christian, it was like calling a person of color now the N word. All right, and so it moves from followers of the Way to Christianity, which was a derogatory term first, and then in 380 it became the official term for the religion that's adopted by the Roman state. Okay, and now we're going to look at the leadership. All right, and so as we look at the leadership, what will that tell us? So I know some might be saying, what does that matter? Well, it matters a whole lot, because what that tells us, and you're going to have to do some research on your own, brothers and sisters. You really are, because we're going to look at the change. Because as we look at the different popes and the different councils and what each council established, then we see the changes getting away from Matthew 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to keep repeating that because we really need to go back and look at Matthew 5, 6, and 7 and compare anything that we are exposed to after that to that. It becomes the standard, all right? Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is the standard for what we as Christians or followers of the Way are supposed to do and in worshiping the Most High God in spirit and in truth. I'm just going to say this because this is true. And having worshipped, I'll just give you a brief history real quick. I grew up apostolic. And so I had to be baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I had to speak in tongues before I was allowed to do anything in the church. We had the tarrying bench, where when you came to church until you got the Holy Ghost, you went. Actually, we had a room that you went into, and until you spoke in tongues, you were were separated from the rest of the main population. All right, until then. So we went in the military. Didn't have an apostolic church there. Ended up worshiping Pentecostal. And the Pentecostal had to be rebaptized in the name of Jesus. All right, and so moved again, went to another area, then didn't have the apostolic Pentecostal, worship non-denominational in Germany, and then I worship AME. Now I'm a Baptist preacher, and so I've been through a few different religions. I've been preaching since 1979, and so what I'm going to say, I got caught up in the dogma of religion, and I'm not bashing anybody. I'm just speaking the truth. And what I've found is that we naturally get into a lot of emotionalism, and we learn as children without any words being said. There are YouTube videos of children praising, or what we define as praising, and some will say that's just the Spirit of God on them, and I'm not going to dispute that, but we are creatures that learn from seeing and hearing and doing. And so a lot of what we do in churches, or what we did in churches until COVID-19, was a lot of emotionalism, all right? A lot of jumping the pews. And I mean, when I was in the apostolic church, we didn't shout for an hour. We didn't think we had church, all right? And so there's a lot of emotionalism. However, brothers and sisters, if we really want to know what we're supposed to do, again, we have to go back to, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over again, we have to go to Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. All right? And so with what little bit of time I have left, let's start to look at the leaders of the Catholic Church. All right, or Christianity, the leaders of Christianity. All right, and so we must understand that those who identify as Catholics, identify as being Christians, and those who identify as being Protestants identify as being Christians. The strange thing is that growing up, while it wasn't said directly, it was implied that there was two groups of folks that were going to hell, and that was Catholics and Baptists, and pretty much in that order. All right, and I'm going to say now that was a ignorant perception, and the reason I'm going to say it's an ignorant perception is that. Brothers and sisters, in order for those of us who identify as Protestant Christians, our history had to come through, or our history didn't have to, but our history came through Catholicism. Okay, the protests, both protests, the protest of Ben Yahweh, the protest or the revolution of Jesus, for the revolution from Judaism into the followers of the way, which became Christian, and then the revolution of Christianity by Martin Luther and his group into what's known as the Protestants, which we have the different denominations that we have now. That's our history. All right. And so again, starting with Peter, and so we can see here that it tells us that Peter was born. They consider him to be the first pope, an apostle of Jesus. According to the Catholic tradition, he received the keys of the kingdom of heaven, which we already read in Matthew chapter 16. And so this is what they use as the establishment to validate for them that Peter was the first bishop in Matthew 16. The feast of St. Peter and Paul, 29 June, chair of St. Peter, 22 February. He's recognized by the Catholic Church as the first bishop of Rome and appointed by Christ. Also revered as a saint in Eastern Christianity with a feast day in June. St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City is named after him. Okay, and so according to Catholicism, Peter was their first pope. Now, we can read what Peter teaches in our Bible. We can read what Peter teaches in our Bible. We can also see where Peter deviates or where Paul deviates from what Jesus said or what Ben Yahweh said in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. And I would encourage you, brothers and sisters, to go and compare. Compare what Jesus says, especially in his six, what I call the articles of his, or propositions of the manifesto, when he says, you have heard it said, but I say. You have heard it said, but, which is a conjunction, I say, which is to change. Change is what revolution is about. So some don't agree with me by saying a revolution, but it's not a revolution. Change. And it's not, when he says, you have heard it said, and we did a Bible study on this again, so it's in the archives, where we looked at each one of these 6 propositions of that revolution, and then you can read the rest of the other chapters. So we need to compare those things. Now, when we get down to the second pope, and what we're going to notice here, just very briefly, is this history of popes identifies some of the changes. We can find more changes again if we go and we look at each one of the councils, the ecumenical councils, which were the sanctioned councils under the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, so the second bishop, 64 to 68, and then 76 to 79. All right, we look the first Roman Pope, feast day September the 23rd, also revered as a saint in Eastern Christianity with a feast day of 7 June. Then we go to the third Pope, and I'm not going to try to pronounce all of these names. I don't want you saying I don't know how to pronounce them or I pronounced them wrong. But you can see it; their names aren't important. It's as we look at them now. When we look at where these popes are born, I hope you can see that the second pope is born in Italy, which is a part of Europe. One of the things, brothers and sisters, that we're going to see through this, and I know I'm going to have to come back next week and go down. I'm not going to complete all of this today, so we'll have to come back next week. But one of the things that you're going to see is that the majority of these popes were from Europe. The majority of these popes were from Europe. Again, validating what I say is that Christianity is a hijacked religion. But again, those who are joining in late, we're not bashing Christianity, and we are not saying that you shouldn't be a Christian. We're just simply teaching the facts. I am a Christian. I identify as a Christian. And for those of you that identify as a Christian, I just want you to know, brothers and sisters, what our history is. The religion that we have is a hijacked religion. With that being said, it's imperative on us to go back and research and to study what it is that makes us Christian and what it is that we're supposed to be doing. Are we following Christianity as defined by Yeshua ben Yahweh, or are we following Christianity as defined by men over time? That's the question, brothers and sisters, that you're going to have to process for yourself. All right. So the second pope is born in Italy. All right. The third pope is born in Athens, Greece. Again, Europe. All right. And notice that they start to establish feast days. It's the Catholic Church that establishes the day of Epiphany, which was the first day of celebrating the birth of Jesus, and then they celebrate what we know as Christmas, the 25th. So these dates, Easter, Easter, again, which is the celebration of a Greek god, is another day that the Catholics adopted, and we celebrate that day as some now call it the Resurrection Sunday. All right. But this is where these traditions and celebrations come from. These were not traditions and celebrations that Ben Yahweh would have celebrated. The holidays that he would have celebrated would have been the holidays of the Jews, because he grew up as a Jew. But even as we look at the holidays that he would have celebrated, we have to look at how he changed and the mindset in which he used in celebrating those holidays, whether he celebrated them as a tradition or something that had to be celebrated in the worship of the Most High God, or if he celebrated them because it was a part of the culture, but challenged the people mindset of why they celebrated. That's something that, again, you're going to have to use your critical thinking, brothers and sisters, to go and look at. And we're going to spend 5 more minutes on this, and then we're going to close. I know we got started a little bit late, but I'm not going to be long on the night. We're going to put in about an hour of study, and then we're going to call it a night, and we'll come back on next week if God wills and tarries. All right, and so let me move up. So Clement the First, the fourth pope, and again, this is another pope that's born in Italy. All right, feast days: 23rd of November. The first Clement, which is said to be the basis of apostolic authority for the clergy. So when we talk about apostolic authority, we go back, according to the Catholic Church, to the fourth pope. Some would say apostolic authority goes back to Acts, or the book of Acts, when Ben Yahweh, Yeshua, picked his apostles, and his apostles established churches. And so the question there for us to ponder is, if the church has already been established, is there a need for the position of apostles today? I'm just asking a question. Don't anybody get upset with me. Don't slap me in your comments. I'm just asking a question. If the church has already been established, because we understand that Judaism was revolutionized by Ben Yahweh, and if he established what was known as the way, or followers of the way, and he picked those who would establish the religion, or establish the church, which were the apostles that he chose, since the church has been established already and now is just continued, is there a need for apostles to reestablish what has already been established? Just a question, brothers and sisters. Another thought for you to ponder and to apply some critical thinking to. All right. He was revered as a saint in Eastern Christianity. You know, this is another thing that we see in the Catholic Church, to where humans who have died, or are deceased, are given the category of sainthood. All right. This is not something that Ben Yahweh gave. It's not something that Christ gave to people. It's not something that we see that the Bible supports that God gave. All right. This is something that the church considered, that these people that they deemed worthy were saints. So this is something else that was established in the hijacking of the church. All right. And they established these different feast days. It tells us that he was martyred by being tied to an anchor and being thrown in the sea. All right. And so we're going to hit one more, and then we're going to call it a night. All right. And that will cover our first century popes. So the fifth pope. All right. And this fifth pope. Now look, it's the fifth pope. We get a pope who is born in what's now called Bethlehem in Israel. All right, he's born in what's called Bethlehem of Israel. And we're going to pick up, because I don't have time to go into, I want to look at the ethnicity of this pope. All right. And so we see he is a Hellenized Jew, said to have divided Rome into parishes, assigning a priest to each feast. All right. And so I want to get into this pope because at this point we have some areas in Africa, or what we now call the Middle East. Again, it wasn't a term in that day, but there were areas that were colonized. And so you have the colonialists, or the colonizers. And so those of you that you understand, if you know your history, you understand what colonizers are. And so we're going to look at and see if this was indeed the son of colonizers. All right, as on next week, so that again we can understand. And so we look at again the hijacking of the Christian religion. So we're going to call this a night, brothers and sisters. I'm going to stick with the time on the Bible study. I would love to be able to do an hour and a half, but I know many of you don't want to sit that long. And so we're going to call it a night again, and we'll come back and we'll pick up with this fifth pope, and then we'll start into the 2nd century and very, very, very briefly skim over some of the changes that were made in what we know is the religion of Christianity. Well, this has been another Bible study. Those of you that know the Pauline epistles, you know that Paul told Timothy to study to show himself approved, the workman that need not be ashamed, but rightly dividing the word of truth. Those of you that understand what a Talmud or a Talmudine are, you know, and if you understand what they did and how they studied, they literally argued with each other on the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and of the prophets. And the other books, they argued it literally in their reasoning together. So we've enjoyed this time with you on tonight, and until next time, continue to shelter in place as much as possible. Wear your mask, and not for you, for somebody else. The Bible does tell us that we ought to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And so even if you don't believe it's protecting you, it does protect you from other people. It does protect other people from you. I'm sorry. And so wear your mask. Use your disposable gloves when you go out if you can. Have your sanitizer. Wash your hands with an antibacterial soap at least 20 seconds as often as you can. And just be vigilant. COVID-19 does not care how old you are, does not care what your social, economic background is, does not care what your education is. It does not care what color you are. It does not care whether you believe in it or don't believe in it. COVID-19 has taken a lot of people out. And so be careful, brothers and sisters. Until the next time, God bless you. We love you. And you can't change that.